March 19th. And Lee, could you please take the roll?
Councilmember Fredericks is absent. Councilmember Nick Farr.
Present, and I also am asking, can you see my video? Greg, you reached out about video, and I reached out to you back. Can you, you didn't respond to any of my texts or anything, or when I said something on the call. Can you see the video?
Yes, we can.
We can see the video,
Okay.
but we can barely hear you. Can we do something about that?
Well, it's a public place, so there's a lot of background noise. So
Okay.
not much I can do about that, unfortunately.
You're fine.
It's background noise, maybe it's just the volume here.
Okay, so could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Nick Farr is here. Councilmember Ryan.
Here.
Vice Mayor Wellner.
Here.
And Mayor Thier.
Here. Okay, so I am actually going to move agenda item A12 up. First, since we have a lot of people in the room here for that, A12 Parks and Recreation Master Plan. So I will first take public comment for any matters that are not on the agenda. Not on the agenda. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Beth. I've been living in Tiburon for a while now. So I did read through the agenda. What's not on the agenda was the sanitation ponds. So the agenda indicates that the town will be talking about the town staff recommendations, which thank you for putting that on the agenda. That's very exciting. But I did notice the sanitation ponds are not there. And I just wanted to weigh in and say that I support the beach volleyball and basketball and multi-purpose recreation and shaded seating concept there. This is something that Post had been working on with subcommittees and had recommended. And so I was just wanted to call out that this wasn't on there, and I would like for it to be added today or in a future meeting. And then I also wanted to mention that other towns have seen success with this. For example, Dunphy Park has a very beautiful volleyball court, beach volleyball court that I really enjoy. Belvedere Park has a great little mini basketball court. There was even someone who posted a letter who lives across the street that said, you can hardly hear it. And then, you know, it used to be a sewage pond, so I think it would just be a really big improvement. And we've all been talking about what's good for tweens and teens. And so that's why I wanted to advocate for it. And then from a more heartfelt story, my 5-year-old and 2-year-old really had a blast at the Belvedere basketball court the other night. Usually it's pretty packed, but it was late at night when my 2-year-old didn't want to go home. And all it takes is a rolling basketball to get giggles and have a good time and get those wiggles out. So I did just want to mention, I would like this to be added to today's agenda or a future agenda. And I counted, and there are at least 17 letters in support and only 1 anti. So that seems to be a pretty popular one. And then, as I mentioned, I believe at the post meeting Monday, it was brought up as a suggestion. So I just noticed that was missing. And also, Greg kindly shared with me the McKeagney Green history, which I didn't actually know it was so recent. So that seems to me like a really relevant case study for something like the sanitation ponds. Another success story that's been really popular and peaceful. Just wanted to point that out to everyone that was more recent, I think in the last 5 or 7 years. Okay, thank you.
For public comments.
Seeing none. Seeing none.
Okay, great. Do we have a staff report?
Just confirming you're doing the consent calendar at the end of the meeting?
Yes.
Okay,
We'll do it right after this item.
perfect. Okay, Mayor and Council. Back in December, after a 2-year planning process, Council formally adopted the Tiburon Parks Recreation Open Space Master Plan. And at their January 15th meeting, had an initial discussion about implementation of the plan and directed staff to return to Council at a future meeting with some additional information. The Council requested that staff create a summarized table of all the site-specific recommendations, including initial analysis of what projects can be initiated by staff as opposed to projects requiring more analysis, design, or community involvement. And also requested staff include in this table the status of any post-commission activities related to the list of recommendations. So following that direction, we have created, we took section 4.3, I believe, from the master plan, which includes all the site-specific recommendations, and created a table of all of those recommendations, and that's Exhibit 2 of your staff report. Most of the items are not color-coded, they're white, and some are green. The ones that are highlighted in green are the ones that staff felt that without any really additional controversy, frankly, or questions, staff could certainly begin work on any of the items in green, and in fact are already working on some of those items. To make it a little bit easier to read the list, we created a second exhibit, which is Exhibit 3 of your staff report, which includes only those items that are highlighted in green. So Exhibit 3, they're all green. These are all items that staff believes we could make progress on without additional, again, I use the word not controversy, but disagreement perhaps on what direction to take. These are things that we think are generally most people support, and I'll be happy to listen to council's comments on that. We've separated those items by property. So you'll see in Exhibit 3, there are ones for Bel Air Park, Belvron Mini Park, Old Rail Trail, Open Space and Trails, Tether Park, the Ranch at Dairy Knoll, Zielinski Park, and then there's a whole category called system-wide recommendations. And I'll just point out a couple of specific ones. For instance, I know there's a lot of interest in continuing to explore the possibility of a SUP kayak launch area, and that is, I believe, in the perhaps the system-wide one. Again, that's one that staff thinks, if directed by council, we're happy to jump on that and continue to work with the community and post on reviewing not only the various work that's been done in the past at looking at that one, but also, trying to think out of the box, perhaps of some new possibilities there. So that's just one example of many. Another one that comes to mind is we all know we've got an incredible system of trails up on the ridge. There are various ways to get to it. One of the recommendations for Tether Park, I believe, and also the Open Space and Trails has a similar recommendation to create sort of a trailhead or a central place where people could get information and perhaps leave from to hike up. And Tether Park has been identified as a possible place because there's a nice little trail that leaves right from Tether Park that brings you up to Mar West, and then another little trail that brings you up to Esperanza. So the idea is, you could easily create a trailhead with better signage leading people to that, and there's parking available at Tether Park. So those are just two examples of projects that we don't believe are controversial and that staff would be happy to work on.
Okay, so now I think what I'll do is take public comment first. Do we have public comment? Chuck.
Hello, Chuck Hornbrook, Chair of the Parks, Open Space and Trails Commission. I'm just here to ensure that you're aware of the three motions that we've passed. I've sent all three of you and Isaac as well. Good to see you, Isaac. And I didn't receive responses from Ms. Thayer or Mr. Wellner, whether or not you've received it or not. I have received comments back from the other council members. So basically it's going through the three motions that we've passed, as well as a summary of it. The importance on this is that we have a lot of commissioners who have volunteered, who are appointed, but they've really worked very hard working with members of the community. And I don't know if that's fully reflected in all the information that you've received in the staff report. And I think it's important to understand that and know that they've done a lot of community engagement and will continue to do a lot of community engagement. So what they're hoping for and what I'm hoping for is a little bit more security that what their hard work and efforts won't be for naught, or will be kind of pushing a noodle, as the business term is. So I'll hand these out to you so that at least you're aware of these. They're also comment number 21, I believe, in the mail that was received late. So let me just hand that to you and I'll be done.
Hey, do we have any more public comment in the room? Great, thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jenna. I'm a Tiburon resident. Thanks for, let's see, do I need my glasses or not? Okay. Thanks for the chance to speak tonight. I was super excited to see Parks and Rec Master Plan back on the agenda, and I just have a few comments and questions. To follow up on what Chuck just said, I've been attending a lot of post meetings, including the ones this year, and I know they've approved several recommendations to put before the town council, and I really support those recommendations. I think they're a great next step after completing a 2-year master planning process that was fairly expensive. And I am also curious why they're not on the agenda tonight. Second, I've reviewed the list of recommendations from the town staff. And I understand these are low-cost items that probably won't require a lot of extra review or public input. And I think they're a really great start, but I wouldn't exactly call them like inspirational. A lot of them seem to be sort of maintenance, upkeep type things. I'd say very, very low hanging fruit type things. And there's some things in there I've never even heard mentioned publicly. And I've been to a lot of meetings in the past year and a half. So I understand, like, it seems like the town really wants to take baby steps. But I'm just curious when we're really going to start talking about really meaningful improvements to our park system. For instance, revitalizing Cypress Hollow Park, adding a picnic bench to Bel Air Park, and shaded seating at Lineal Park. And I think the sanitation pond site is something we should be talking about. And I know there's a really great proposal to convert it into a multi-generational play space and relaxation area. And I think this is a great proposal. I mean, this was a sewage pond site, and we now have a really inspiring concept for what could happen there. And I think these are much needed amenities that would benefit people of all ages, and it's the perfect spot. I know sound is a big issue, and that's a great spot because you have a hill and you have a busy road, and so it really mitigates sound issues. And I'm sure you saw, I think you've got like about 17 letters now that you got in advance of tonight's meeting just about the sanitation ponds, playing court and shaded seating area proposal. So I really hope that we can talk about that. I'd love to see it on an agenda in the near future. And just to wrap up, the master plan process lasted 2 years, cost over $350,000. I really hope we can make that process worth our while, and I'd love to get to work on improving our parks and making them enjoyable for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, do we have more public comments? Anyone?
Thank you. My name is Emily. I'm a resident of Tiburon. I've been here for coming up on a decade. As I was leaving my home tonight to come down to this meeting, I had 2 kids wrapped around my legs in hugs, and I was explaining where I was going. And they said to them, "Do you want better playgrounds in Tiburon?" And they both said, "Yes." And then one of them said, "But I really want my mommy here for bedtime." And I'm tired of coming to these meetings and missing bedtime. And I bet most of you are tired of seeing me here. And I'm really hoping, thank you, but I'm really hoping that this process can move towards its conclusion soon. It's, as people have said, it's been 2 years. It's been dozens of meetings, surveys, focus groups, more meetings, hundreds of thousands of dollars on consultants. And now we're still waiting for things and still moving toward what? More public input. There's another round of surveys coming out. There's more consultants being brought in for more ideas and more pushing this around and looking for public input. And I really feel like this list that the staff put forward tonight is great. There's a lot of really wonderful things on this list, and I support so much of that effort, but it also does not include so much of what has been asked for, so much of what is reasonable, and so much of what is wanted by so many in Tiburon. As our town council, you're our elected representatives, and I believe I speak for so many in town, and asking you to make some decisions in your upcoming fiscal year budgeting and beyond to commit to some short-term wins that could really make a difference in the quality of life for so many of us in Tiburon, making the 2 small playgrounds that we have safer, updating them, the stand-up paddleboard launch, getting the mini parks renovated, usable, safe in terms of maintenance, and accessible, picnic tables, ADA compliant entrances, the sanitation ponds, others have said. There's a short list. You've seen it from us before. I can share it again, but there are really some relatively low level, relatively inexpensive things that could make an enormous difference. And rather than continuing this to a point where so many people who began this process won't even be around to enjoy the fruits of its labor, I really hope and urge you to make efforts in the 1 to 3 year timeframe to make some of this, to get it into place. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have more public comments? Okay. Yes, yes.
Well, hello again. I'm Beth. I live downtown, and I have to say, as exciting as it is that this was on the agenda tonight, I have to say, I feel a little bit ashamed that Tiburon's playgrounds still haven't been updated. I mean, it's like 20 years from these playground equipments. All we got was, a far right column note. I appreciate it's on the agenda. I like a lot of the ideas, but it's like I've literally been to dozens and dozens of focus group, post meetings, town hall meetings. I've met with council members one-on-one. I've talked with neighbors that I don't really want to talk to, but I'm trying to listen and to incorporate their feedback. I've tried all the playgrounds out in all the areas. Everyone else in other towns is updating their playgrounds, which I've sent all of the town council. I mean, there's like literally a list of 16 playgrounds being updated in Southern Marin, and we are not one of them. Belvedere Park, Jenna was there with her kid. There were 5 birthday parties there. The park's bursting at the seams. The library, they have no parking. The bathrooms stink because it's just stuffed with people. This is a neglected group. And I feel ashamed that I have to tell children that these playgrounds are honestly this shitty. So I would expect that at some point we would put on paper, we have this whole thing done. What are we going to do? And I appreciate and I recognize that Cypress Hollow was listed in a far right column. Maybe it's going to happen, but I want to know what's going to happen. And I want budget committed. And I want to see that playground safer. I literally have no playground to take my kids to. Cypress Hollow is not safe. There are huge gaps. If I were to renovate my deck right now, I couldn't do that with the town. The gaps are like this big and the paint's falling off. You watch one kid up there, one kid there, it's a mess. And then south of Knoll Playground, it's hidden. I mean, I don't know if that was on purpose so that people out of Tiburon don't make it, but like my kids don't like the stroller. We're not getting there. So I don't have a playground. And my kids are 5 and 2. And I feel really disappointed that the playgrounds aren't getting the attention that they deserve. And we have information on this demographic. We've provided information on what we'd like to see there. And then, I would just like to make sure accessibility and inclusion's included. I like a lot of the ideas too, included like the SUP launch. That was the number one. I think that's really important. I saw some people in Shoreline Park mentioned, I actually live right around there. Personally, they don't really care about my view, so I'm not really concerned about their view because their trees are blocking my house and they won't give me a couple minutes to talk about that. So I feel like, find a SUP launch, but talk with the neighbors, find something that works. I think there's a couple options. That's great. That'll meet multi-generations. But don't forget about the playgrounds. And then I already mentioned the sanitation ponds, and I don't want those to be forgotten about either because that would be tweens and teens. But thank you for all of your hard work and on post, on town council, on the town staff, and hopefully that far right column of Cypress Hollow means that something's going to happen with playgrounds, but I'd like more info. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have more public comment? Online?
Seeing none.
Okay. So I'm going to bring it back to the town council. And I am going to start off with a few things, if that's okay with everyone. Isaac? Okay, great. So let me start off by saying that in the table are all of the post recommendations except one that happened 2 days ago. And the reason the one that happened 2 days ago is not on the agenda is because there was no way to publicly notice that. However, in the table, it does reference all of the ponds. So that is something we can also discuss tonight. This agenda item was in response to the last town council meeting. And what we wanted to do was just what you're saying, Beth, is that we wanted to get going on some of this stuff. Now, Post is also doing more work. They're doing some community outreach. And I know that that a lot of the members of our public have been going to those meetings. Now, they are still doing that outreach. So what we're doing tonight is not the end. We want to we want to get some input back from Post on some of the other things that we've all talked about doing. And what we want to do tonight is get some of the things that you're talking about done. So with respect to, so what I'd like to do is, if my colleagues would allow, is that I'm going to make a motion right now, and then we'll discuss it, and then we'll add on to it. Anything anyone else wants to add. But I do want to get our discussion focused on concrete things that we can do. So I want to start with one of Post's recommendations, which was voted out, I believe, unanimously. Is that right, Chuck?
All of them were, yes.
Perfect, unanimous. So that was the kayak SUP launch. And for people who are listening who may not know what I mean by that is to direct staff to work to find locations and cost out a budget and bring that back to us. So I want to add that as the first point in the motion. The second point in the motion, and it's going to be long, is to renovate the playground and lawn at Cypress Hollow Park. The next, and that would be an inclusive renovation of the playground. The next thing is a feasibility study for
So is this, which item is that?
I'm making a long motion. That is, I don't know what item it is. These are my notes.
Okay, but I'm just saying that if we're going to be able to keep track of what you're
Okay,
proposing.
That is CHP 1
And also SW11.
and CHP 3. Jack, can you keep track of that?
So you're saying CHP 1, CHP 3,
Okay.
and then, I'm sorry, where was the kayak? It's, which number?
Jack says SW11. The next thing is a feasibility study for an inclusive playground at Zielinski Park. I am also exploring another path of trying to get an inclusive playground donated. So I would like both of those tracks to go at the same time.
Sorry, can you just repeat that again? I missed that.
Yes, a feasibility study for an inclusive playground at Zielinski Park.
Hold on.
Some of them aren't going to be on here, I don't think, but maybe they are.
P1 in Zielinski Park.
Okay. The next thing,
So, I'm
is-
sorry, repeat what you said about Zielinski Park.
so a feasibility study for an inclusive playground at Zielinski Park. And then as a sidetrack, just so everyone knows, I am also exploring, I'm trying to get an inclusive playground donated to the town. But we should start with a feasibility study because, you know, despite my best efforts, I may not be able to get a playground donated, but I'm doing my best.
Mayor Thier, is that the end of your motion?
Thing has been, oh, sorry, Isaac?
Is that the end of your motion?
No, I have more.
Oh, okay. I was just
So,
waiting to
next
second, so I
thing
wanted to know
is,
when you were at the end of it.
a permanent, the permanent signs for a bicycle speed limit on the ORT, and also having the maximum limit highlighted. Right now, I believe we have the reverse. We're not saying the maximum speed limit is not clearly as visible as it could be. The next thing is to create a map of town parks, trails, recreational spaces, and to post it on the website.
Okay, so now the where's,
That might be SW1.
And then this, we're not going to have a line for, but when replacing or building new play structures, that we make them inclusive.
Sorry, John, it was also ORT2.
Okay. And then I would like to go through, I would like to add in the green items that are highlighted And I'd like to know if anyone would like to remove any green items before I add them all in.
Well, I think it would be useful to tick through each of the items listed here in gray and just make sure that we understand what's happening at each of them.
Okay, and before I say that, I didn't clearly explain. So a lot of the items in Exhibit 2, just for people that might not have it in front of them, that are shaded green are maintenance items and other items that are things that staff has identified that we could and should be doing anyway. Another item that I do want to highlight is to incorporate sea level rise adaptation into park design at Richardson Bay. And that is including the consideration of the drainage through Blackie's pasture and nature-based improvements at Greenwood Beach.
Where is that on the
That's
sheet, please?
That's BP1.
That's SW9 on page 3 of the large chart. And then under SW1 on the shaded green, that's page 3 of 4, I would just add under life cycle replace and or improve play structures, I would add and make them inclusive. So that was kind of my prior item, but. And I want to say, these are the things that are in the motion I'm making right this minute. That doesn't mean that we're not doing other things. Post is still doing outreach around a lot of these issues, and we want to give them their time to finish and bring it back to the town council. So I'd like to have everyone else on the council talk and add in anything you want, take something out, whatever you want to do.
Okay, so I do have one question about an item that was previously discussed. There's a lot of things here, so I may have missed it, but I know there was some discussion about coordinating with the community center in Strawberry with regard to swimming. Is there any report on that or status update on that?
I believe there's a post subcommittee working on that.
Yeah, I have some comments on that also. So John, I can answer your
One
question.
second, Isaac. Is there anything that our AV people can do to increase the volume of what he's saying? You don't know this, Isaac, but you sound like a tiny little mouse in the corner. So I'm trying to improve the sound so we can hear you.
Well, in a giant hotel casino lobby, I am a tiny mouse in the corner.
Okay. Even if you are a tiny mouse, there should be a way to hear you better. So we're working on that right now.
Yeah.
I think we've got it maxed out here, so it's.
That's the most we
Okay.
can do.
Let's just-
Okay,
let's
then
just-
let's go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one
ahead.
option is I could just get closer, maybe, but that's not great on video. So John, Strawberry is not really a viable alternative for swim. They're already maxed out. They're completely maxed out in prime swimming time. And what I met with them with Chuck, the post subcommittee, and Jack was there also. And what Nancy, who runs SRD, was pitching us was, could we get more elderly people to come in the morning hours when no one's there? And that's not really what we want, or it's not really what we need. There's already access to Strawberry for anyone, residents of Strawberry or otherwise. But she did mention that there was some talk about potentially significant expansion and digging into their hillside and basically 2.5xing the size of their pool if we're interested in contributing to that. So that's one potential option we can talk about, but I would imagine there's a large financial commitment and or responsibility to that option. and maybe just as cost prohibitive as if we were to look at options in town. So I think that's something we can think about, but they're already maxed out at Strawberry during prime times.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you for.
Yeah.
sharing it.
Okay. Jack?
Yeah, so thanks. So, thank you, staff, for doing this. The only, the concern I have with the motion is that it's huge, you know, and I get that all of these things are great, but I'd love it if we could just somehow get to a more concise motion for some things to do right away. And this is going to sound different than what you're saying, so, but they ultimately can be complementary. Because I feel like this list, this is like, if you ever played Risk, you want to have armies on all of the countries that you have, but every turn you can't put armies on every country. You have to pick. And so I want to move forward with all these, but I want to do the key ones first so no one steals Australia from me, right? Like everybody knows what I'm talking about. Is that the Risk theme? So, and so there's a couple of things going on here with, and I'm going to focus on three documents. One is the green. One is the letter that Jenna sent in that was public comment number 11 or late mail number 11. And then the other thing is the document that Chuck sent, because I think all three of those we can work together to make some directions to staff that would be very direct. And so, for example, one of them is consistent with what you said right away and is consistent with something on Jenna's letter is to direct staff and Post to work together on identifying a site for the kayak SUP launch. And I know there's been work done on that, and I know you guys have done work, but I think that the key is now getting a site and then moving forward. So direct staff to move forward with identifying a site, I think would be one very concise way of getting that forward. I think with respect to the other motion that Post passed, with respect to the parks, I agree that we want to move forward with SW11, which is Cypress Hollow. And it is also in Jenna's, it's the very first thing in of her 6 in her letter. But if we combine that with the Bel Air Park and the Belveron Park, and we haven't done the survey yet, I'm just kind of worried about how the sequencing happens there.
Yeah, so the part of the park that I called out was just the replacing and upgrading the play equipment and surfaces and restoring the lawn and improving lawn maintenance. That's something that we just do now. And then once the survey comes back, we could add or look at these other things that people might want in that park.
So, yeah,
That was the idea why I didn't put everything
okay.
into
I-
that bucket.
So-
But definitely the restoring the lawn and improving maintenance. We talked about this a couple months ago. We should not have any parks where there's divots or it's unsafe for the kids. And, I know that these are things that Public Works can do relatively quickly. So we didn't want to wait on that, but we wanted to respect post-process of the survey and whatever else.
Right.
I'm not sure how Chuck does all these things, but he does. And,
Yeah.
having all that outreach is good.
So if we can direct staff to sort of move forward on those things as they can, taking into consideration the post process, right? On the mini parks. I agree with that's a great one as well. And then the third motion that the post passed was,
Here, it's right here. It's, 2 days ago. It's right here, Jack, this one. Is this what you're talking about?
the ponds, yes.
Okay.
So with respect to the ponds, none of those was in green because I think that is a priority, but I wouldn't consider it low-hanging fruit. And what I would love to direct the world to do is to have the post subcommittee of Mike Moon and Liz Judge, those commissioners at the next council meeting, come and give us a presentation on what their vision is based on their public input. Because I talked to Mike and they've done quite a bit of thinking around the whole area. And I think if you hear the way they've thought about it and talk to people about it, and you get a vision of the whole space, which goes all the way from south of Knoll to the area in front of Greenwood Cove Road, then we will become more comfortable with each element and how it fits within that bigger vision, and we can move forward on those. So it's an interim step, and I know that you guys want quick action, but I think that that is the best way for us to be confident that the actions we're taking fit within a vision that we've spent so much money creating. So that's what I would say is we ask the post subcommittee to come present to us at the next meeting so that we can then move forward on that.
Just on the RBSD.
Just on the pond site. But their presentation will be on the entire Blackie's,
Yeah.
McKegney, South
And-
Mill site.
and can we not modify that, but I don't know when the surveys are gonna be done, but it would be good to have them come once. So if it's not the April 2nd meeting, could they come to the May meeting?
But I thought the surveys were the mini parks.
They are.
So that's
but
a
we-
different subgroup.
I know, but,
I want the subcommittee to come present to us.
okay, perfect.
I really think, once you hear Mike speak, you
No, that's
you
fine,
you
that's
get it.
fine.
And
Yeah, we-
it soaks in on you and you feel like this is the right way to go. And then, so again, back to Ms. McKnight's email, there was and you identified it as well, it was an ORT2 and something that that corresponded with the fifth item on her letter that was signage and creating like a,
That's part of the motion.
yeah, right. So those were the things that I thought were like basically taking her letter, pirating her letter, mapping it to the post recommendations, and then kind of only adopting some of the post recommendations.
Yes, okay.
But because because for example, like if we add the sea level adaptation, I just feel like that is a slower thing and will take more analysis. And I would rather just go for some of these things first.
So what I would do is I would flip it back. I would flip it back to you again. And I would say, how about in the motion, you set those as priorities, but we keep the rest? What I would hate to have happen is that, these never get adopted when some of these are, improved site drainage. They're things that the town needs to do every day of the week. And if we tell our staff, hey, we want you to do this, they will prioritize it.
Yeah.
And can do it, every day. Some of these things are everyday things. So I would ask that we keep the motion as is, but we set a priority on it based on
Okay.
what you just said.
Yeah, I like that. I agree. I mean, we should march forward with
Okay.
all of this stuff opportunistically. And for example, so, when, with the Bel Air mini parks, the town can engage a landscape designer while they're doing the survey for the Bel Air, and then while they're waiting for that, they can hire, like, there's definitely things that can kind of move together,
Yeah, I don't think that.
but like things can move forward. I agree. Yeah.
A lot of these are maintenance, they're trail signage. I mean, these are things that we've been wanting to do for a long time.
Agreed.
So I don't want to hold off on everything, but you're right. We can set priorities.
Just-
And I think the way you said it, if you would say it kind of in a motion format. I mean, not in a motion format, but we can add those as priorities if everyone agrees.
Yeah, I would move forward with the SUP kayak launch. I would direct post subcommittee to come speak about the lineal park.
Okay, that doesn't need to be part of the motion. We'll just put that on the agenda.
Okay. I mean, okay.
So prioritize the.
Well,
sub-
let me add something to that.
Okay.
So when we have something that comes from post, I would strongly prefer, I think Jack's kind of making this point, that we have the subcommittee or people from post actually present and be there for Q&A. I think it's as a former post commissioner and chair of post and Mayor Theory, I think you were in the same boat at some point when you were running on post. When you bring something to town council, there's a missing layer of context when you go from written text in a wonderfully written staff report, fantastically written staff report by our amazing staff in town, but there's still some level of context that you need the people from post that are putting this together, or from planning, or from other committees, to give that additional layer of context. So I guess I would modify Jack's ask to say to add for other items, like if we have something like Bel Air mini parks, even for this item, I would have loved to have seen one or two people from post on the next to town staff or wherever it's available, so that they're available for normal commenting and not restricted to public comment.
Right, that's a great idea. Okay, John, do you have?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're suffering from a bit of chaos, but that's okay. I the idea behind low-hanging fruit, it was kind of never that precise of an idea, but it was, the idea was to get a list of things that would eliminate comments from residents about like, how is that allowed to be this way, right? So to the extent that those are covered by the green items, I think absolutely we should. I mean, that's kind of the beginning thing is, and anything staff thinks it can do easily and quickly, we should do. So that's kind of the first piece. I think that's in the motion already. I think I like the individual items that were articulated by both of you. I think I really like the idea, and this again, it doesn't have to be in the motion necessarily, but it's an agenda item. I like the idea of having the post subcommittee talk about, the former sanitation district land. I think it would be. I think that while it was understood that, in the master plan, it was described what types of uses would go there. That's very different from saying, okay, we're actually going to put down on paper a picture of what it could look like. And so I think that's a conversation well worth having sooner rather than later. So I don't object to any of the things that have been presented. I do feel like we're kind of, the idea behind the master plan was to kind of create an organizational structure that we could orderly move forward from. I kind of feel like maybe that hasn't quite happened yet. I think part of it is, I know Post is doing a lot of work. I'd like to, maybe when more of that work gets done and is presented, it'll feel more, right now we're kind of, when you're waiting to receive a product, you kind of worry, is it going to be complete? Is it going to be good? Is it going to be thorough? I'm confident and hopeful that it will be. So I'm kind of eager to get that and move forward. One of the things we didn't want to do was wait for example, on the green items, we didn't want to wait for committee process to catch up. So, the things that we can just do, we should do. I feel like there are probably there probably are things on this list that we should be initiating in small ways now that we haven't gotten to, So in other words, we've identified priorities to move on now. But for example, I'm not even going to pick one out, but there are some things that aren't going to magically happen. So we have to kind of start a planning process now so that something that's not low hanging fruit now will be in 6 months or 9 months or a year. So that's kind of what I think is, maybe if I had to put my finger on it, I think that's what I'm concerned we're missing. But I think it's a good start. I'm glad to do all the green things. I think the priorities that were outlined by you guys are good, and we should pass the motion and move forward.
Okay. So.
Did you,
Was there a second?
so,
We need a second to the motion.
so do we need, by the way, to, maybe I'm asking staff, maybe I'm asking you, but talk about, there's 17 things on here. Like, there's one that's, that Greg mentioned sort of the signs for the trails from Tether Park. Like, that would be easy, but I mean, that'll affect like 5 people a week. And if we do something at Cypress Hollow, that'll affect 100 people a week. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
like,
but I don't
or
think
do we
we
just
have
say
to,
move
I don't, I
forward
think you should just
op-
move forward on the green
opportunistically?
items.
Okay.
I think if you, but what I will say is, here's a question that I have, for example, just, and this is by way of example, not because I want the whole
Yeah.
meeting to focus on this issue, right? But like, for example, when you look at Bel Air Play Area, it says BA6, provide clear rules and regulations for dogs. Okay, so what that tees up in my mind is the following. Are there rules and regulations for dogs that are not understood? And are those just going to be put on a sign? Or is this proposing to create rules for dogs, which I imagine is probably among the most controversial things you could possibly try to establish if they don't already exist? So when I look at this, I'm like, well, if you're supposed to pick up after your dog, and this means put a sign that says pick up after your dog, great. If this says something about leashes that hasn't been true before and is now or something like that, it's going to be a huge deal. So that's my question with some of these things. I mean, if it's clean up signage, replace broken things,
Right.
that's all great. If it's policy changes, then that's not low-hanging fruit.
Okay, so I think that's a really good question. Staff has sent these to us and said they are not controversial, but let's ask, are any of these green shaded items policy changes or something that would create a lot of controversy in one of our communities?
Again, we don't believe so. And using, again, I know we didn't want to go down the
fine,
rabbit hole
either.
of the dog thing, but
Fine.
the idea is to clearly sign what the current regulations are.
Yeah, okay.
Whatever they are.
That's what I was hoping it
And
was.
now that may be controversial because, for instance, I don't know Bel Air Park necessarily what the dog rule is, but if the rule is your dog is supposed to be on a leash, and we post it that way all of a sudden, then I cannot guarantee you there's
But I'm
many
okay with
folks.
that in the sense that if there is a rule
Right.
and people don't know what it is,
I agree.
it should
Yeah.
be communicated, and if people don't like it, it can be changed. But the point is, what we can't have are rules that are just universally ignored, because that's not a rule. That's just
Right. But to answer your question simply, it's not to change any rules. It's to clearly
Clarify.
articulate what
Okay.
the current status quo is.
All right.
Yeah. So.
Okay, so Jack.
And I'm sorry, I do have
Nope.
one comment
Oh, no,
about signs while we're on this. And again, I don't want to lose the forest for the trees here, but I will say that a number of people have commented to me, this is a little bit related in a way to the way we close off Main Street with plastic orange things that aren't very good looking sometimes. Some of the signage that we have is like plastic A-frame things that fall over in the wind and that kind of thing. And I don't know if, I'm hoping when I read install clear signage, and all that stuff, what we're talking about is, permanent attractive signs that like don't fall over, right? So I assume that's what it is.
Well, there may be a two-step process here. There may be, immediately putting up some signage that may not be cohesive and attractive, but longer term, one of the items is develop a sign more or less program so that all the signs in town sort of, there's a theme, they look the same, and that's going to take some time, clearly, and we're not going to make that up. But at a minimum, we can tidy up what's out there.
Yeah.
And then improve, aesthetics a little bit later.
Okay, and I'm sorry, there's one other thing I have to, because I took a picture of this when I was walking through Blackies. The photo or the sign that is in front of the sanitation ponds, which says, and I have it,
It's funded by Prop 68 or something.
funded by Prop 68.
Yeah.
Is that correct? I thought we took it from the ARA funds. And so anyway, all I'm saying is that this
Yeah.
sign makes it look like the state did it.
Right. Right.
And I thought it was Tiburon using its funds to do it. And so I was very surprised by the sign and wondering why it's there.
It's a very long, complicated story that probably isn't worth getting into right now.
Okay,
I'd be
we'll
happy to
talk about
talk to
it
you
later.
up later. Yeah. But we are required to have that sign up because we did receive funding from the state under that proposition that was initially for the ponds, and that's why it's there. So, but we can.
We'll talk about that later. Anyway, signs.
Yeah.
Okay, so if the motion was to prioritize, to move forward with everything in green, prioritizing CHP 1 through 3, ZP 1, SW 1, 6, 9, 11, ORT2 and any of the other green ones that are related to those, then I would second that motion.
Okay, could you read this?
So they were CHP 1 through 3, which is the Cypress Hollow.
So I had called out CHP 1 and CHP 3.
Oh, sorry, 1 and 3 then.
1 and 3, right?
ZP 1, which is the studying the Zelinsky Park, right?
ZP 1 is promoting the Zelinsky Park and Library Plaza for events.
Yep, and then adding study it for an inclusive playground.
Okay, that's a separate
That's a
item.
different item.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Different item.
That could be
that's the
that could be
feasibility.
ZP2 if you want.
That's a different
All
item.
right, then that's ZP2. I'm just
Yeah, I
making it.
actually don't see that item on here, so
On the,
if you'd like to. Right.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I see it. I'm sorry. It is right here. Yes, yes.
Yes,
It's
sorry.
under the catch-up.
It's not, yeah, sorry.
Okay.
So I'll call that ZP star. And then system-wide, there was 1, 6, 9, and 11. Which also went with ORT
Yes.
2.
The one thing that I would like to put first, though, is the creation of a kayak sub-launch. That's something that
Yep,
I think.
which is number 6. Okay,
It was voted out by post unanimously.
agreed.
Okay.
So those were the ones on the green that we want to prioritize. And then, as you said, with particular priority with the SUP kayak launch.
Yes.
And then there was something about working with the post
Right. The
motion
post,
for the,
you wanted to have the post subcommittee, Mike Moon and Liz Judge at the next meeting to talk about the vote on March 17th.
but what about the mini
by
parks?
post. And then,
Or was it just the green ones?
so Isaac brought up having post come when there's an item on the agenda.
Okay.
So that would cover the mini parks. We don't need to vote on that. I think that's a good thing for us to do, no matter what, is to have post come and talk about how they came to a decision, especially after the survey. So that doesn't need to be a motion, but we'll
Okay.
just do it.
So if that was the motion, then I would second it.
Okay, I thought you already did, but okay. Okay, any more discussion on the motion, Isaac?
Yes, I would like to amend the motion to add Zelinsky Park as a potential for playground. I didn't hear that as in the list with Cypress Hollow and South Knoll.
That was number 2. That was a high priority. It was a
Oh, maybe I missed that.
feasibility study
Okay.
for inclusive playground at Zelinsky Park. And I
Got it.
also,
All right, great.
okay, great. South Knoll is not included.
Right. Correct.
So we can go on to vote on the motion.
I think so, yes.
Most,
Councilmember Fredericks is absent. Councilmember Nick Farr.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
yes.
Vice Mayor Wilmer.
Yes.
And Mayor Thier.
Yes. Okay. So we are now going to move to the consent calendar. Is there any public comment on the consent calendar?
I do have someone online. Recognize Linda.
Hi, my name is Linda Sapolsky. I am not commenting on the calendar. My daughter was in the Bel Air play tonight, so I wasn't able to make it when you were talking about parks earlier. But I just wanted to draw attention to the high community engagement that's really looking for the sanitation ponds to be developed into, a basketball court and beach volleyball court and some great amenities for like multi-generational recreational use. And I'm just trying to understand better, like what moves it forward. Like it was my understanding, having attended the Monday meeting with Post, that tonight there would be, assuming that there was high turnout, which I think there was a number of emails and I think people were, with the play tonight, but just that there would be sort of something about moving forward, like a design, like a motion for a design person to be hired. So like, it sounds like that's not happening tonight. So just trying to get, and I'm new to all of this, like clarity on why that's not happening when so much of the community is pushing for that. And it sounds like it was the recommendation of the post with the whole master plan. So that's my question. Sorry that I'm at the wrong part of the meeting.
Okay, thank you. We don't normally respond to questions, but I will respond. So we are having the post subcommittee come to the town council to discuss post's vision. And that will include the basketball and the volleyball. And yeah, so that is coming before the town council at the next meeting. Okay, any more public comment?
Seeing none.
Okay, so now, would any member of the town council like to remove an item from consent? Okay, then, do I hear a motion?
I move that we pass the consent calendar as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, could we call the roll?
Councilmember Fredericks is absent. Councilmember Nick Barr,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wellner,
Yes.
and Mayor Thier.
Yes. Okay, we are now moving to public hearing number 1. And I do want to thank the applicants and the appellants for allowing the first item to move forward in advance of yours. There's just a lot of young children that a lot of the moms need to get home to. So we move that item up. So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about, unless Lee, do you want to go over the appeal procedure?
Excuse Mayor Thier, would it be possible for us to do the cultural events action item around the cultural events before this?
What's the reason?
That's a short one. I believe it's a short one.
Well, sure, yes. Let's move to action item 1, 2025 cultural events. Is there any public comment? Is there any online?
Seeing none online.
Okay, seeing none. Is there a staff report?
Yes, before you tonight, we have 2 items. One is going to be the consideration of authorization of funds for 2 cultural events coming up in the next year. And the other part of this will be to consider the Main Street road closures. So the DITF just recommended before this meeting, the council approve expenditures for the 2025 Persian Spring Festival in the amount of $8,000 and the Diwali Festival next fall in the amount of $8,000 as well. So the council consider that as part 1 of this item. And part 2 of this item will be the council is considering both of them have requested closures of Main Street. And the council has previously approved 2 closures of Main Street in the calendar year 2025, and a couple of years ago, the council expressed the desire to limit Main Street closures per calendar year to 6, 3 of which are reserved for the chamber. So in following council direction, you have discretion to only approve 1 more for the calendar year 2025, and there are 2 that are asking for it tonight. So we're looking for a little direction on that as well.
Okay, great. Do we have any questions for staff?
I would like to make a motion that we approve the funding for both events.
Sure. Second.
Just to be clear, you're approving the funding as recommended by the DITF because it differs than what the
Yes.
staff report says. Okay.
Yes, $8,000 for each.
Thank
Okay.
you.
And then we also have the issue of the street closures for both. Did you want to
Did
add
that
that?
motion get a set? No, I didn't want to add that. I wanted to just approve the funding, and I wasn't sure if there had been a second yet.
Okay,
There was.
okay. Is
Okay,
there
great.
any public comment on that motion? Okay, we will move to the vote then.
Councilmember Fredericks is absent. Councilmember Nick Farr,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wellner,
Yes.
Mayor Thier.
Yes. Okay, is there another motion for the street closures?
I mean, I would move to, I could come to making a motion to close the street for one of them, but I would prefer to have a more thorough discussion about the number of events that we close the street for before we go closing it, approving it for both. But I don't know what the organizers are counting on at this point. I know one of them is relatively soon, right?
Yeah, man, I do think we also, like we did with the amounts, I think we have a bit of a favoritism issue here. I mean, it's hard to imagine approving, what are the two coming up?
Right. It's the Persian Spring Festival and the Diwali
Yeah,
Festival.
it's hard to imagine allowing one to close the street and not allowing the other to close the street. If we want to have I mean, we've had in the past, as we've been reminded, we have had in the past kind of target numbers of closures. I think we pretty routinely have exceeded them because we come up with a number, I think it was 6.
Was.
3 for the chamber and 3 for events. And I think the situation has changed because we're having these events as part of the success of the diversity initiative, right? So, one of the options that I think has been used successfully, I'm curious if staff have comments about it, is the proposal to not do them on the street, but to do them in front of the library, right? Yeah. So that's become an option, and maybe we need to, at the beginning of the year, when we're kind of proposing next year's events, say we're willing to have X events in the street and X events elsewhere. I mean, that could be one way of handling it. I just think it's a little tricky now to say, I wouldn't want to pick between these two and say one can be on the street and one can't be. So that's kind of the question that I tee up in
So
response.
is that a motion?
Yeah, I'll move to approve the street closures for both of those events.
I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, let's have a vote. Steve?
Councilmember Fredericks is absent. Councilmember Nick Farr,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wellner,
Yes.
and Mayor Thier.
Yes. Okay, now we are moving on to the appeal. And I'll go over very briefly the procedure. So town staff is first going to do a report. Then the appellant or the appellant's representative will get 10 minutes for a presentation. The applicant or the applicant's representative will get 10 minutes. There'll also be a public comment period. There'll be 3 minutes of rebuttal for each side. And I would like to start off by asking our staff, I believe it's our Director of Community Development, Dina, to make a presentation.
Yeah. Yes, good evening, Mayor and council members. This tonight is an appeal of the approval of a site plan and architectural review by the Design Review Board for 21 Mara Vista. So the project is located on an 8,054 square foot lot in an R1 district where 10,000 square feet is normally required. The subject property is located on a rectangular lot and is shown in that blue shaded area towards Mar Vista off of Hillary Drive. The applicant is proposing to demolish the existing single-family dwelling and construct a new approximately 2,400 square foot single-family dwelling with a 483 square foot garage. So this is the existing conditions. This shows you the house currently and the site plan. It's not very visible on the PowerPoint. I do apologize. But the setbacks from the property line are there for you to view and also were included in your staff report. I'm trying to go through this a little bit quicker so that we respect how long everybody's waited. And then the proposed improvements will are a little bit more important for you tonight because you've got to consider whether or not this design and the design review board's decision to approve this is in keeping. And so the existing, the proposed front yard setback would be 15, the rear would be 40, the right side is 8 feet, and the left side is 8 feet as well. And so what you're looking at is, whoops, I'm going the wrong way. This is very good, Dina. Let me get back to where I was. It's a new. So what we have is the appellant lives here, and this is the applicant's, and this is the side yard. That is of most discussion tonight. So just so you understand where we've been to get here, the applicant's original proposal was received on January 3rd. On February 5th, there was another resubmittal based on comments and another one on April 25th, another one on July 15th, and another one on December 12th. Many of these discussions were based on comments from the neighbors and changes that the applicant were proposing. On January 16th, the public hearing before the design review took place, and at the conclusion of the meeting, the board directed staff to return with a resolution conditionally approving the application requiring that there be additional landscaping to be planted on the side yard. As I had stated previously, that is the area of most dispute. Adjacent to the deck, prior to issuance of a building permit, I do wish to add, you do have the resolution in your packet. I think it's Exhibit 2, and you'll note that the Design Review Board approved this unanimously. On February 18th, there was a timely appeal filed by the neighbors at 25 Mara Vista. So what I'm going to do is go through several of the appeal grounds and with some responses from staff. So the DRB's conditional approval, this is inconsistent with the town of Tiburon zoning code, specifically the purposes of site plan and architectural review, established in Tiburon Municipal Code, Chapter 16, Section 16-52.020A6, ensuring that construction complies with all applicable town standards and guidelines and does not adversely affect community health, safety, aesthetics, or natural resources. Despite being a non-conforming lot, as I stated before, it was less than the 10,000 feet. The applicant proposed a design that complies with all applicable development standards for the R1 zone, including floor area ratio, lot coverage, and building height. And I'm showing these two photos today because this is where I was talking about it went through several renditions, 4 rounds. Originally, this was the proposed design on the left-hand side, and it included quite a few decks, as you see, and it is a much larger structure with a second floor here. In response to the neighbor's concern and some of the neighbor concern, as well as some other neighbors, the decks were reduced. The floor area was reduced by 400 feet. The full second story was done with only a partial second story here. And along this side of the project, the windows were removed, so there would be less privacy issues with respect to the adjacent property at 25. Just to show you some of the existing conditions of the adjacent properties impact privacy and noise. Requiring a side yard setback in this residential district is 8 feet. The adjacent deck at 25 Mars Vista was constructed at the property line, reducing the required distance between the two properties of what should have been 16 feet to 8 feet. The existing residence and deck at 25 Mar Vista are also at a higher elevation than 21 Mar Vista. Therefore, it does not appear that the construction of the deck above the garage would present an opportunity to view into the home, windows, or adjacent deck, which is not already able to do so. And that's what I'm trying to show in these photos, which is this photo here was taken from 25 Mar Vista in the bathroom window. And as you can see, the deck and the home is already visible, as is this one here. And this is taken from 21, and you can see that the windows are already visible with the existing structure. So the construction would not, the design review board found that it would not create any additional impact. Appeal ground number 2, the DRB's conditional approval is inconsistent with the town of Tiburon, specifically the guiding principles of site plan and architectural review established under Tiburon Municipal Code Chapter 16, Section 16-52.02 H2, site layout in relation to adjoining sites in H3 neighborhood character. Our staff response: the project complies with all development standards. There are no variances associated with this project, and it is consistent with neighborhood character because the development pattern are such that decks are placed within the front yard due to the sloped rear yards and narrow side yards that limit the location for similar structure and/or green space. And I'm showing that when you see these blue squares, this is the front yards, and the asterisks are the two properties that received. I'm trying to look for what their variances were. Just a moment. So 13, which is this here, received a reduced front yard, and 25 in 2021 received a lot coverage floor area exception. There was no variance for this side yard. It was existing since the county. And when they did the reconstruction, there was some improvements to the retaining wall, but there was no need for an additional setback variance. So and furthermore, some of the conditions that you see here, this image here shows 25 Mara Vista, that's the appellants, showing the slopes in the backyard, which limit the decks and outdoor spaces, so they are in the front. The front yard from 17 Mara Vista, which is lower than 21, there's, you can see this short story pole here for the garage. In most of these, you do not, and this is the side lot where, there is a greater ability on the street side to have a larger site, but most of the other ones are tucked in with side yards of 8 feet. And what we're trying to show you here is this purple box are the side yards. So this is the side yard at 21 that I'm pointing out now. This is the deck that exists at 25. And the gray boxes show the proposed and existing decks for both of the properties. Thirdly, the DRB's added condition of approval is inconsistent with the town of Tiburon zoning code and specifically design guidelines of site plan and architectural review established under Tiburon Municipal Code 16, Section 16-52.02J, as it relates to hillside design guidelines. In this instance, or in instances where the site is not considered a hillside development, such as this subject property, or there are conflicting guidelines, alternate means such as screening and landscaping may be considered as mitigating measures for privacy. The DRB evaluated the appropriate means of screening that would mitigate privacy concerns rather than the noise, as there is an established pattern of decks and outdoor recreation areas in the front yard of the subject property and adjacent lots. Ultimately, the DRB found that landscape screening would provide a privacy barrier between the two homes, and the use of landscaping barriers is consistent with the neighborhood pattern. The subject property, as I stated earlier, is smaller than the remaining lots in the area and has complied with all development standards as considered. their neighbors' desire for privacy and design their home accordingly. They considered it, excuse me, as you can see by the revisions that were made with both reducing the number of outdoor spaces and the second story to a partial second story and eliminating windows along the right-hand side. And just furthermore, the applicant has been willing and agreed to provide the landscaping plan to the satisfaction of the neighbor as one of the conditions that was part of the resolution from the DRB. So staff recommends that the town council conduct a public hearing on this matter, deliberate and consider adopting one of the following options. Deny the appeal, upholding the approval made by the design review board, and direct staff to return with the appropriate resolution for consideration of adoption at the next meeting. Grant the appeal, denying the application, and direct staff to return with the appropriate resolution for consideration of adoption at the next meeting. Partially grant the appeal by making revisions or adding conditions to the design review board's approval, and direct staff to return with the appropriate resolution for consideration of adoption by the council at the next meeting. Alternatively, remand the item to the design review board with specific direction regarding any aspect of the property needing further review and deliberation. The board's decision on remand would again be appealable to the council. And with that, I end my presentation and I am available for any questions.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Are
you.
there any questions for staff?
I have one question. I want to make sure I understood. So the subject property of the appeal hasn't received any variances,
That is correct.
and the neighbor who brought the appeal has a deck that predates our zoning and therefore is inside the setback. Is that correct?
It's on the zero setback and it was
Zero setback.
predating any
It predated.
1964, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, do we have any more questions? Isaac, I can't see you because you're covered by the sign. Do you have questions?
No, not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Now I am going to go to the presentation of the appellant or the appellant's representative, and you will have 10 minutes.
This is for the pointer, this little sun guy, and back and forth. What?
You mind showing me the pointer?
This one, this little red guy points it. Perfect. Okay.
And
Yes.
please, let's put those slides.
She'll
Thank
put it
you.
up and then you can just move in.
Perfect, thank you. Can I stand or do I need to sit?
Whatever you're more comfortable doing.
Oh, you can stand, but you have to hold the mic so we can record it.
Ah, I see, okay, makes me more audible. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Great, yeah, are we ready? You just, oh, thanks, Lee, just let me know. Oh, we're good? Okay. Town Council, thanks for having us. Arif Fazal, my wife, Kristen Fazal. We're the owners of 25 Maravista Court. We appreciate listening to our appeal, thoughtfully going through it. We want to make it clear, you've already had a chance to review our appeal brief. This 10-page document that came in with the application that we submitted in February. We want to make it very clear. We have no issues with the house that they're proposing that has been approved by the Design Review Board. We have no issues with the existing front patio at 21. It's glorious. It's 600 plus square feet, beautiful views. What we do have an issue with is that's not good enough for them. They have to move it over 20 feet abutting our property, which will create inconsistencies in the neighborhood. So Dina actually showed a nice photo up there about our neighborhood. The reality is, and Councilmember Wellner, you mentioned that a lot of our front parcels actually go to the property line, the front patios do, because it's how the neighborhood was built. We'll see that in a second. The Design Review Board, we believe, erred in understanding the gravity of the implications of moving their front patio 20 feet closer to us and now abutting ours. It has significant inconsistency issues with the neighborhood. It has significant privacy invasions to us next door at 25. And it has significant noise disturbances, not only to us next door at 25, but across the street at 14 Maravista and 12 Maravista. Noise, privacy, and neighborhood consistencies are all tenets of our town, established in our codes and in our guidelines, our hillside guidelines. Specifically in our zoning code, there are multiple paragraphs that talk about noise. They say, thou shalt not build something to incrementally add undue noise to thy neighbor. They say that thou shalt not, these are my words, thou shalt not create privacy invasions to thy neighbor undue. Right? They also say that we should keep in the spirit of the neighborhood. So the Tiburon Hillside Design Guideline actually has nice illustrations, drawings to actually articulate the issue that we have at hand. Front outdoor areas of congregation, decks, patios, etc., should be separated by distance. It specifically says vegetation is not acceptable for such buffer. Let's see how our layout looks today. This is our wonderful Mara Vista Court. We are grateful to live on it. This side of the cul-de-sac is the odd-numbered side of the street. Let me go back. My finger is too fat. It hit both buttons. Sorry. This is the odd-numbered side of the street, southwestern facing. Everybody on this side, their views are from their front. Naturally, we all have front patios demarked by these orange rectangles. Everybody has one, deck, patio, or lawn. This is where they congregate. Neighbors come together, family members, friends. This is where people spend their time. Enjoy the vistas, southern facing, long light, sunsets, bridge views, etc. Notice that no two of these orange boxes abut one another. They are separated by structures. Driveways and garages are the de facto separations. I believe Dina mentioned that landscaping was. It actually, I'll correct her, in showing that our neighborhood has been built with driveway and structural separations, these green ovals, if you will. Right? We've demarked these. Why is it built like this? Because that's what the town has asked it to be built like. Pursuant to the hillside guidelines, pursuant to the ordinances. Everybody gets to enjoy their wonderful orange parcels in their front, their patios, their decks, without impacting the neighbor. These buffers, these green spaces are for the preservance of noise. You're not adding noise to your neighbor. You're not adding privacy invasion to your neighbor. This is why our neighborhood is built like this. I'll also note that all of these front areas, they all go to the property line. As Councilmember Wellner just alluded to, right? There was nobody is unduly going through their setback, right? These are how this neighborhood was designed. All the front patios, all these orange boxes go to property line. If we home in specifically on 21 Mara Vista, which is right here, and the adjoining neighbors, you'll see this is consistent. Same applies. No two are adjacent to one another. They're all buffered. So you can enjoy your outside area without hearing your neighbor, without sharing your noise with your neighbor. You can enjoy your outside area without seeing into your neighbor. Very important tenants. All of these go to the property line. The 21 Mara Vista, beautiful expansive deck, glorious views, 600 square feet. There was half a dozen photos in the MLS listing when they last sold the house. Glorious views. We have no issues with this. We've lived next door to it for nearly 20 years. Many times it's been used. We actually enjoy when others use theirs as we use ours. They're all nicely buffered. We don't hear as much noise. They don't see as much of us. We don't see as much of them. This is there for a reason. Our issue is they're trying to move their patio. They're trying to slide it over 20 feet. And in doing so, this would be the only parcel in the entire neighborhood without a buffer. They would be eliminating that green oval. It would be the only parcel in the entire neighborhood. This would also be the only parcel where these two orange rectangles abut. The only parcel in the neighborhood. It would create a horrible inconsistency in the neighborhood. A dramatic issue for the entire neighborhood. You've heard it from the neighbors through their letters and their testimony today. Additionally, there'd be a noise concern, not only to their across the street neighbors at 14 Mara Vista and 21 Mara Vista, but for us next door at 25. This is the front view. They are trying to take their deck, which is here, and slide it all the way across to the end of this arrow. They're also raising it 4 feet. This story pole here is actually the base of the deck. So picture yourself standing on top of this line, this red line, moving the deck over 20 feet, raising it 4 feet. We know that sound gets louder as it gets closer. They're moving 20 feet closer and 4 feet up. It's going to be much louder to us next door here. Scientific principles of acoustic sound propagation quantifies this. It'll be 2.5 times louder. The deck here is 2.5 times louder than the deck that exists. These are our private spaces, our master bedroom, our master bathroom, our son's bedroom. It'll be 2.5 times louder noise from their deck. Downstairs, you can see our kitchen window here, and on this side, sorry, I've got the jitters. There's windows to our office and to our media room. This deck produces 2.5 times more noise than the existing patio. This is extremely disturbing and a material amount of loudness. Similarly for privacy, they're now 20 feet closer and 4 feet higher. If you're standing right here, this is their new deck. Picture yourself on it, 20 feet closer, 4 feet higher. We all know conventional wisdom. As we get closer to something, we can see it. Dina mentioned that they could see our windows. She showed a picture of seeing a window. There is a huge difference between seeing a window and seeing into a window. I submit to you all, we could walk outside and we could see the windows on the houses at Cove Street. We could see the windows at Woodlands. Guess what? Not until we walk closer to them can we see into them, which is exactly what happens here. You go stand on top of this, you can see into our master bathroom vanity. You can see into our master bathroom commode. You can see into our son's bedroom. You can effectively watch him change. You can effectively watch me coming out of the shower. You can effectively watch me using the toilet. These are disturbing privacy invasions, which, by the way, are exacerbated at night. When it's light inside and the lights are on and it's dark outside, they'll be sitting at their patio, walking back into their house, staring at my son in his bedroom. This is wrong. How would you feel if someone was coming into your neighborhood and wanted to move their glorious, beautiful view, 600-foot outdoor living deck, 20 feet abutting to yours, thereby perverting the neighborhood of its consistency of buffers, which exist because of town standards, to protect privacy, to protect noise? How would you feel if someone's deck moved closer to your master bedroom, your master bathroom, your child's bedroom, your kitchen, your office, such that the noise coming from their new proposed deck is 2.5 times louder than it is from their existing condition? How would you feel if they could now look into your master bathroom, your master bedroom, your son's bedroom? How would you feel if all of these noise, privacy, and neighborhood consistencies were supposed to be protected by our town through the codes, through the guidelines that we have established and exist? So we ask you, Town Council, to kindly uphold our appeal to make a simple change to their design, which is to ensure that their new front patio is no closer to us at 25 Mara Vista than their existing condition front patio. In fact, their new front patio shouldn't be closer to any neighbor, not just us, but it shouldn't be closer to us. Their current existing condition patio could remain where it is. In fact, their design would very feasibly allow this and would give them the wonderful views that they want. It would give them the outdoor living that they want by keeping the patio where it is today. Keeping it where it is today would keep the neighborhood consistent. Keeping it where it is today would keep from incurring new and undue privacy issues to us neighbors. And keeping it where it is today would prevent new and undue noise issues to us neighbors. And keeping where it is today would abide by Tiburon's guidelines on noise, privacy, and neighborhood consistency. We appreciate you listening to us. We hope we've been able to articulate our perspective, and we hope you agree with it. Looking forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions?
So did the DRB see the view of the neighborhood with the decks all on the one side, separated by the driveways, but at their January meeting?
I didn't have that slide for them, no. Or sorry, are you asking me? Yeah,
I had the
I
information.
wish I did. I mean, I only did 3 minutes to talk there, and I wasn't able to use slides.
I know that the DRB went and conducted site visits, so, and understood the pattern, of the neighborhood.
Alex and Jim came to our house. I don't know if Suzanne did. Yeah.
Okay, are there any more questions? I have a question. How far is the deck right now from the property line? Is it 20 feet?
So the current condition in the neighborhood, their 21 Mara Vista Court's existing deck, again, goes to its property line, much like 17's, much like ours at 25. Is that what you're asking? And from the line? Yeah, I mean, the whole neighborhood, their front outdoor spaces go basically to the property line.
Okay, but the red there, that is the 20 feet.
The driveway width right now is exactly 20 feet. Yes,
Okay,
exactly 20
great.
feet. So the buffer right now is 20 feet wide.
Okay. Okay. Do you know how far the 20 feet is to the property line?
Yeah, there's an 8-foot setback. So there's 28 feet right now.
Okay,
right? But what they're removing is 20 feet. So that's why I'm saying it's 20 feet closer.
got it.
There's still an 8-foot difference.
Okay,
There's a planter right now that's an 8-foot planter box at this side of the driveway, which they're actually reducing in half.
okay. Thank you. Any more questions? Isaac, do you have any questions?
Yeah. The size of the house, what's the change in the square footage of the home?
Dina,
Do,
maybe.
do you mean the new home? It's a
Yes.
brand, no, do you know what's the difference, Isaac? I mean, Mohammed? Yeah, so currently it's, what's the square footage of the home? Because I know what it is proposed to be. Yeah, so the new home is going to be 2,400 square feet.
Right. That's in the staff report, but what's the existing square footage of the existing home?
It's around 1,700 to 1,800 square feet.
Okay. And it is currently a single
Yeah,
story home.
1,700 then, let's call it, round it up.
And currently it's a single story home, or is
That's correct.
okay. So we're going from a 1,700 square foot single story home with a deck in the front to a 2,400 partial second story home with a deck over the garage on the same side as 25 Mara Vista.
That is correct.
Okay.
Uh,
Thank you.
Okay, great. Any more questions, Isaac? Okay.
No.
I did have one other question for Dina. What is the regular setback in the area?
So
8 feet.
normally there's an 8-foot side yard setback. The property at 25 Mara Vista had a deck that was constructed prior to incorporation that is on a 0 property line. And then there's a 8-foot separation to the driveway for currently, the current condition, with the 8-foot setback on Mara Vista between them and 25.
Got it.
Okay,
And the new proposed deck is actually over a garage.
that's correct.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any more questions.
I think the architect's coming up next, and so he can explain some of those square footage issues.
Do we have any understanding of the conversations that have happened between the two parties?
So the understanding that I have is that there have been several iterations here that were, as I spoke to before, through 4 different submissions that were dealing with massing, the numbers of balconies, the privacy along the right-hand side of the dwelling. I stated earlier that the windows were removed to allow for more privacy along the side yard of the new proposed windows on the right-hand side were removed. Several of the decks were taken away. The full second story became a partial deck.
Yeah, I'd like to submit to Councilmember Mixfart's question. None of the submissions addressed this front patio move. Not one, even though we've been saying it from the beginning.
Yeah, the question I have is around what sort of remedies were done outside of this DRB process between the two parties. Was there a conversation? Was there an attempt at resolving this prior to getting to DRB?
The owner has never introduced himself or herself to us. The architect first approached us in November 23 with a letter that spelled our name incorrectly, that spelled our street name incorrectly. And since then, they have slowly had to, I think the town actually encouraged them to come to us and other neighbors. There's been a handful of letters. I think when the DRB heard this hearing, there were 9 letters of opposition, 0 letters of support. I think in today's meeting, there's 4 letters of opposition, or at least, 4 letters of support for our appeal. So, we've told them in multiple times since the beginning that this movement of the deck 20 feet closer to us has significant impacts to us, to other neighbors, and also is inconsistent with the neighborhood, but they've not done anything about it. specific to the deck. They certainly amended the house, as Dina has mentioned.
All right, and then one more question. If you were to draw a line down the middle of, let's just say, a picture of this proposed home, and you were to mirror image it, flip flop it, does that remove your issues with the home?
If you did that in the middle story, probably not an issue, right? But you can't move the top of the second story over, because then it would just completely abut our house, and we'd have implications for light, for view, right? Because where they have their second story, I think, is where you should have your second story in this condition. So I don't think you could change the third. If you're looking at it from the street, there's the garage level, there's the main level, then there's the third level where the master suite is. I don't think you could change the top level, but you could certainly intertwine the middle level. I don't think that wouldn't affect us.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions for the appellant? I am not seeing any. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And it is now time for the applicant or the applicant's representative to present.
Could I have some light here? So that I can read my sight isn't the greatest.
Yeah, we can turn the light.
Good evening and happy Nowruz. It's our New Year's tomorrow. So my name is Mohammed Sadria. I'm the architect on this project. We're applying for a proposal to demolish an existing home and build a new home and garage. This proposal is consistent with all zoning requirements and is 454 square feet smaller than the allowable square footage and about 6 feet under the maximum height limit. The home is sited in approximately the same location as the existing home. Originally, we proposed a 4-bedroom home with 2,850 square feet of building, 4 bedrooms, 2 upper story decks, and some windows on the east facing the view. After objections by our neighbors at 24 Mara Vista, we removed both upper floor decks, removed all but 2 of the windows facing east, and removed an entire bedroom, bathroom, and closet that was closest to their property. I'll reiterate. We removed both upper floor decks, removed all but 2 of the windows facing east, and removed an entire bedroom, bathroom, and closet that was closest to their property. That was the work that we did for that neighbor. Currently, there's a deck at the front of the existing building at elevation 67.4. The current deck is being proposed at elevation 69. So when when our neighbor says that it's 4 feet higher, it's 4 feet higher than the driveway, but certainly not 4 feet higher than the existing deck. Now, concerns regarding the privacy. Our neighbor has provided photos that show that their newly built windows looking directly on our property. Now, when they were remodeling their home, apparently they weren't as concerned about noise and privacy as they are now, because these windows look directly down on our property and they're visible from all vantage points on our property. So if this impact is felt so accurately, so acutely from our proposed deck, they would have the same impacts from the backyard. So does that mean that we should not be allowed to utilize our backyard also for the first 20 or 25 feet closest to their property? Because the vantage point to their windows and the privacy concerns about noise and so forth are equal from the backyard as well as from this front deck. And what kind of regulation would it be for the town to say that there is not allowed to be no open space adjacent to another property? That means that any home that has a backyard should not be allowed to use 20 feet of their backyard closest to their adjacent home, to their adjacent neighbor. That doesn't make sense. We've eliminated all the upper level windows facing their home. Is it reasonable to prohibit outdoor gatherings on our property because the neighbor's windows look directly down on our property as a choice that they made? Concerns relating to noise. Our neighbors are concerned that people might congregate on the deck or leave the door open and make noise that would disturb them. However, they currently have a deck that is directly on our property line. Now, why is that noise beneficial and the noise from our deck harmful? Since the front of our building is facing the view, is it reasonable to request that the owners of 21 Mar Vista not use their front yard? What kind of precedent are we setting? We prohibit people to sit in their front yard or their backyard because it may bother the neighbor. Do we prohibit people from using parts of their yard because they're close to their neighbors? As far as the noise, we did a little experiment this afternoon with my client, and we went and we stood at the deck in the current building, and then we stood in front of the building across the street that was concerned about noise. And he spoke in a conversational level, and I could hear the sound of the voice, but I certainly couldn't make out what he was saying. And then if you consider that there's a fence and landscaping behind where he's supposed to be concerned, I don't think that there's really an issue with the noise for the neighbor across the street. The owner of 25 Mar Vista has an upstairs deck and main level deck so that they can enjoy the views and the weather. They should not prohibit my client from enjoying their property in a similar way. We have suggested providing landscaping of their choice to provide additional screening. They've created this situation by building 4 windows looking directly down on our property and building a deck that comes almost to the property line. Now, there was discussion about moving the deck or outdoor area to the other side of the building. That really doesn't make a lot of sense because this deck faces our family room, which is where it should be enjoyed from inside the building, while the other side of the building is the area where there is the bedrooms. And also this allows us to have a green area on the other side of the home in front of the bedrooms that would not be possible on top of the garage. So having the deck above the garage makes the most sense, and relocating the garage on the other side would not be feasible because then you would have a 3-story structure that would exceed the height limit. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so now we have a 3-minute rebuttal.
Do we want to do public?
Public comment first.
Public comment first. Yes, is there any public comment? Let's start in the room. Would anyone like to make a comment? Okay, you may come up to the microphone and introduce yourself and say whatever you would like to say.
Yes, thank you. Excuse me for walking slowly.
You take your
but
time.
I'll get here.
Take your time.
Thank you. I'll get here. My name is Richard Seidman. I live at 14. My wife and I, Jill, live at 14 Bar Vista Court, which is directly across the street from this house. We had been protested originally and still protest this project. First of all, let me say that we so completely support the Fazal's concern. It's obvious that their house has been there for a long time. They've had untrammeled privacy and enjoyment of their house. Now they're faced with a house that's moving toward them. And the rebuttal, if I heard this correctly, is somehow it's their fault because they have a house that has windows. And it's their fault because they have a yard. And it's their fault because they have a patio. Well, you built your house with the conditions that you find. You can't change the conditions of other neighbors when you decide you want to have a particular dimension and design for your house. You have to live with what you find. All of us live with that, and we've all endured that, and you've heard that time and time again. But the Fazals have a great concern, and I think it's justified. Both I and Larry Bazzani, whose home is right next to ours, look directly at this house. We're very sensitive to its consequences, and and both of us believe that the Fazals' concerns are amply justified by what they've seen and what we've heard. We have houses, both of us, that are, if you haven't been there, I don't think, because the design review board wasn't there at any time, so they never did look at us. Their concern, when we talked about it, was these houses are adjacent, facing each other, and therefore they're acceptable because they're across the street and facing each other. The fact of the matter is, both the Bazzanis and myself have houses that are about 10 feet below the slope, and the house that you're talking about here is about 20 feet to 25 feet higher. It's a steep slope from one house to the other. So their house is quite elevated already. That's how they had the view. Otherwise, they wouldn't have had a view because the intervening houses would have prevented it. Their elevation, therefore, puts them right directly across from the Fazals, and it puts them directly overlooking us and down slope at us, looking in our patios. Both of our patios are affected by this. So I would urge you to consider the fact that what the Fazals have raised is a substantial problem with the design of this house, both in terms of its position and its elevations and its impositions upon their own enjoyment and privacy and ability to enjoy their property with the kind of security and happiness that all of us would like. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, do we have more public comments? Oh, could you come up to the microphone? Would you like to speak? Okay. Sure, sure. If you don't mind introducing yourself again, because
Yes,
we're
I will.
recording the,
I'm Larry Bazzani and my wife is Karen Jones. Did you hear all that? Yeah. And we live right across the street from the new proposed house. And we are 10 feet below the road. So when you were looking at those pictures, you could see that. And we have a nice rear yard patio, and it was pretty private. But now with that house how tall it is, obviously we're not going to have no privacy in the back. And not that they're going to be staring at us with telescopes or anything, but it's just discerning. I don't know exactly what we can do about it, but we don't like it. And I don't know how to remedy it easily. Yeah, because the previous house was only 1 story, so, and they could see a little bit into the backyard, but now it's just like, just think of somebody way up there looking. It just, our patio or our picnic area, I don't know, it just makes it different. That's all.
thank you so much.
All right.
Okay, do we have anyone else who would like to speak? Okay, do we have anyone online who's waiting to speak?
Seeing none.
Okay, great. So now we have a 3-minute rebuttal. Either one of you could speak or both of you can split the time, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I think I'll start. May I, have the slides back up, please? Thank you. Oh, right where it all was. I don't take it back. Yeah. I just want to quickly state, the applicant was talking about people trying to prohibit the use of the front yard. I mean, we're not trying to prohibit anything. I think I said time and time again. They have a glorious front yard that's been used over the years in spades, and we've had never an issue with it. 600 plus square feet with beautiful vistas. So no one's trying to prohibit anything with anything. The applicant also spoke of the backyard, and I was very confused as to what that was about. Again, I think Richard said nicely, this neighborhood was built in a way where, all these patios, right, go to the lines, go to the, all these front outdoor areas actually go to the lines, go to the property lines, go through a setback. So there's no sort of ill-gotten gain or whatever the words that have been used in the staff report or otherwise. We didn't put this on ourselves. I certainly hope not. The issue is, I think simply just neighborhood consistency and noise and privacy implications. Kristen, there's another minute and a half. Is there anything you want to add, or? I think I've kind of covered. I mean, the last thing I would just say is that the applicant also said there were 4 or 5 iterations. They certainly were. We don't need to get into details. Most of those were about the structure. And if someone had actually respected the town guidelines, the second-story home additions, the zoning code and ordinances, as it relates to building up, they would never have started where they started. Right, so it's like, do you get credit for making additions to something that should never have been there in the first place? Making, revisions to something that should never have been there in the first place? Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that's fair. I feel like what we're asking for is fair, though.
I just want to state that I'm Kristen. This is certainly not where we ever expected to end up. We are a very friendly neighborhood, and we all very much respect one another as neighbors, privacy, noise. If someone's having a gathering, they let someone know, etc. We wouldn't be here if we'd ever met the neighbors and worked with them on this project. I don't believe that anyone in this room has actually met the new owner at 21 Mara Vista. We suggested that they invite us over through their architect to discuss these things so that maybe they could get a sense, because I think the noise is as detrimental to them as it is to us. And I think it was pretty clear in hearing the other 2 neighbors speak that if we had met and been able to work through this, I think that a solution would have been come up with prior to even going to the design review board. But unfortunately, there just hasn't been a great working relationship. Again, like, we have never met the owners.
Okay, thank you so much. So is there any staff summary?
Close the public hearing first?
Yes,
I think both sides get a rebuttal, don't they?
they
point.
just had,
No,
they just had their.
no, Councilmember Warner's right.
The applicant has it.
Oh, I'm
The
sorry.
applicant
I'm
gets a
so
3-minute
sorry.
rebuttal.
Yes, I'm so sorry. The applicant, it is your turn for rebuttal. Thank you so much. And our town
Yes.
attorney told me to close the hearing. So it's his fault. It's not my fault.
Thank you. One point about the second story that was mentioned, that apparently all the downhill neighbors have great privacy until we create the second story. If you look right next door to us, there is a home that is much higher that has windows looking directly down on those neighbors. So I don't see how we impact that privacy that much more. And as far as working and so forth, just one anecdote that I would like to bring up now that some of these matters have been brought to light is that, for example, one of the times when I had a meeting to go to meet with the neighbors next door, and usually what's customary is if there is a view or privacy impact for them to take you inside the house and show you what you could see from their house. It was raining and I was made to stand outside while they got it together to come and talk to me in the rain. Was never invited to go in the house and view the issue from inside their home. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I will close the public hearing and I will ask if staff has any summary. No.
I don't have a summary, but if you have any more questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Are there any more questions for staff? Okay, I'm going to see if any of my fellow council members would like to start.
Yeah, I have a question. I just have a question
Okay.
for staff, actually. What is the next step in terms of additional appeals and other things like that that can happen after this meeting, depending on which direction it goes?
So in the staff report, there's several options. You can grant the appeal. If you granted the appeal, we'd bring back a resolution granting the appeal and denying the project. And the next step for the property owner that's the end of the administrative process for the property owner. If you were to deny the appeal, then the project would be approved, and that would be the end as well for the appellant for the administrative process. If you were to go back to DRB, which is another option, then with direction of what DRB should consider, then the DRB would have another hearing and come up with another recommendation or resolution. And if that was appealed, it'd be appealable back to the town council.
And there's also one other option. I don't mean to overstep, but the partially granting of an appeal if they wish to partially grant the appeal by making revisions or adding conditions to the design review board's approval, and then direct us to come back with that resolution with those changes.
Do you have more questions?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, Vice Mayor Wellner.
Thank you. I do have one question before I make my comment, and that is, I thought I heard you say, Dina, that you were aware that the design review board visited the site. Is that correct?
Our design review board goes to the site for every
That's what
meeting.
yeah.
They may not meet with every neighbor,
Yeah.
but they do go to the site. They do view the story poles. They sometimes go on the site if they have approval from the property owner. They also do visits to adjacent properties when they're invited.
So, all right, thank you. So my comment, I want to preface it by saying that I don't think I'm speaking out of turn. Maybe I am, but I don't think I am when I say that I think universally, council members really dislike dealing with these appeals for a number of reasons. I mean, it's part of our job. We'll do it. But there are a few issues. Most of the time there are, you can find a situation where there are win-wins, but most of the time someone leaves happy and someone leaves disappointed. It's an unpleasant process to do that. And the other issue that comes up, and I'm sure if I didn't say this, someone else would pick up this point, and that is, we really hope that by the time it gets to this point, people have been able to work out their differences and communicate. It's always, a failure when it has to be, oops, let's let that go. It's always a failure when we wind up neighbor against neighbor in a fight that comes to the council. It's just, it's unpleasant for everyone, and we just want to share with you that we don't take these issues lightly. This is the worst part of the job, sitting as a court instead of as a council. And so I just want to begin by saying that. Second principle that I think behooves mentioning is that we have excellent commissions and boards. We spend a lot of time appointing great people who really care about what they do. And in particular, we're always very impressed with the Design Review Board in terms of its level of thoroughness and care that they put into decisions. So while we are free to review the facts and evidence and overturn their decisions, particularly when a decision is based on a unanimous vote. That's my understanding. Is that correct, Dina? It's a unanimous
that's
vote of the
correct.
board and one in which they visited the site. I'm loath to second guess their judgment, although I can. We all can if we see any egregious issues. In this case, I don't see those issues. I think the property, the project that was approved, it's actually pretty rare that we see a project that doesn't have any variances. This is all drawing inside the lines. And I think that the compromises that were shown by the applicants were impressive and significant. And I don't see any legal or other basis for overturning their decision, and so I would deny the appeal.
Okay, other council members?
Yeah. Yes, I think the first thing I'd like to echo Councilmember Wellner's comments about our posts or our commissions and boards. I think the DRB has a unbelievably difficult job, meeting after meeting, and I think we appreciate the care that they take in evaluating these cases. And there's no point to having a DRB if we don't trust their process and understand they're taking very careful analysis and in-depth understanding of what's going on and what the issues are here. I also, I'm a Tiburon resident. A lot of homes in Tiburon are very close to each other. My neighborhood is very similar, and the Delmar neighborhood is very similar to this Mar Vista Street, where homes are close together. There are beautiful views, and so I think I would also say that I empathize with both parties here, because I think both are just looking to enjoy the property that they purchased and put blood, sweat, tears into improving. The third thing that I'll and last thing I'll bring up is that in reading through some of the materials, it looks like there were 3 out of 5 DRB members present for this hearing. It also sounds like there was maybe some rushed or incomplete presentations based on what we've seen tonight being different than what the DRB saw. And it also sounds like a limited number of DRB commissioners were able to, or board members were able to go on site and view the conditions. So I think I would support sending this back to the DRB for another round of review, rather than serving as a ministerial, judge in this instance.
Hey, do we have anyone else that would like to speak or?
I don't want to speak, but I will.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm two things. I'm a coward and I'm an optimist. And emotionally,
Wow.
I really appreciate what the Fazals have said and and their neighbors and how that is they're worried that it's going to impact them negatively. But as Vice Mayor Wellner said, when I look at it from what the DRB did, I just can't, I mean, I watched the meeting and I've read all the material and I understand it. I understand the arguments and I understand how thorough and meticulous you are. And I really appreciate that. It is awesome to see you come and be so exacting. But the DRB, what they do is when there's a conflict between the zoning and the hillside design guidelines, they interpret that based on their expertise and their history and their experience. And I especially feel badly because I know that you guys have had a previous bad experience with the DRB a long time ago, and that won't change. But my inclination is that sending it back to the DRB won't change anything. Their discussion, like they acknowledged all of these things that are issues, but they ruled and they ruled 3-0. So I just don't necessarily see that sending it back to the DRB would be productive. But I'm curious to hear what the mayor has to say.
Okay, well, I would
Mayor,
say-
do you mind if I add one more point about potentially sending it back to the DRB? I think one of the things that I like to see is additional opportunity for neighbors to potentially come to some sort of resolution. And I think by sending this back to the DRB, there is an opportunity of time where the neighbors could potentially resolve some of these issues, or at least see where each other are coming from between now and the time of the DR meeting. So apologies for jumping in, but I thought that was an important point to consider.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So I'll echo some of the comments that you've heard before. The town council doesn't always like to hear appeals because we have to, there's a winner and a loser. But, we definitely always respect DRB's process. We've appointed DRB to do this job. In this case, the things that concern me the most are the neighbors talking about how this is going to really change the neighborhood character. I think that I agree with Isaac and the idea of sending this back to DRB for two reasons. It does not also sound like there was time for the neighbors, the Fazals and the applicant and the appellant to work together to see if there is any other solution. And I would love to see it go back to DRB to explore that. And also to see if the neighbors could work together and come up with a solution. I think there probably is a good solution that would benefit everyone, including the other neighbors. So now that we are 2-2, I will turn to my town attorney, and that means 2 votes in favor of denying the appeal is what I'm hearing from my colleagues, and 2 votes in favor of remanding this to DRB, which is no disrespect to DRB. We believe that they do an awesome job. However, I'm going to turn to our town attorney and ask what we do in this situation.
So
Before that, can I ask, so what will I mean, I haven't voted, we haven't voted, but I
Oh,
mean,
okay.
what is the direction to DRB? Because if we're going to direct it, if we're going to remand, we need to make sure this is productive, right? What's the direction to DRB?
And if I may, just to echo Councilmember Ryan's, the code requires if a remand happens, that the council shall provide a specific description of the outstanding and unresolved issues.
Okay. Isaac, do you want to respond to that, or do you want me to respond?
Yeah, I think again, like I had mentioned at the beginning of my comments, I think the DRB does a phenomenal job And I think that, it's very rare that we even see appeals like this because they're so thorough. But I think in reviewing, the materials and hearing from both sides, it just sounds like the DRB wasn't given all the information, and that it was, and that's not on the DRB, but I think that more information has clearly come to light. I think there's also the the time between now and then potentially to come to some sort of resolution. So what I would say is that given new material that has come to light, and that I think it's worth the DRB reviewing that new material.
What is the legal problem with what they decided? In other words, what are you saying? Are you saying that you think it isn't consistent with the hillside guidelines? Are you saying, what is it that you think we're directing them to do, other than tell everyone to work harder to reach a settlement?
Well, it's not work harder, John. That's kind of mischaracterizing what I said, isn't it? Missing information it doesn't have anything to do with effort, does it?
Okay, so you're saying the grounds and to be clear, this isn't data that wasn't in existence. This was an argument that hadn't been prepared and delivered. But you're saying because of the chart that you saw that the appellant presented, you want to make sure that DRB sees that chart and then makes its decision, including that chart.
That's right. And maybe I heard this incorrectly, but I thought Councilmember Ryan also expressed questions about whether the DRB had seen that same view. Maybe I'm off base, but I don't want to put words in Councilmember Ryan's mouth. But that's what I have in my notes.
I mean, it was a question, but I wasn't introducing it as a question in the deliberations. It was a question that I wanted to have answered. That's all. But I hear it. Okay.
So what's the
Go
answer to
ahead.
this legal question that the mayor posed?
So if it's a tie, if there's 2-2 split, the appeal fails and the DRB's decision is upheld, that's in our code under 1666.030.
Right, but we haven't voted. So I mean, if we send it back to the DRB and can we say to them, take in all the new information and then come back to us? Is that?
No, you need to have, as our code provides very clearly, a specific description of the outstanding and unresolved issues. So I think you have to articulate what is the outstanding issue that you want the DRB to resolve.
Okay, so that is something that I think I can articulate. It's the location of the deck. And is there another location that is farther from the 8-foot setback? And also what I would ask is that DRB facilitate a meeting between the two parties.
DRB's a Brown Act body. I don't know how, you can
Or
direct staff.
I'll ask staff to facilitate a meeting between the two owners of the homes and their representatives or their representatives. And I want to talk a little bit about why, y'all are going to be living together. You're going to be living next to each other. Everyone's going to be in the same neighborhood. If there is a way to come up with something that everyone's happy with, or maybe 50% happy with and 50% not, I think it's worth a try. And again, it's no disrespect to DRB. I just think there might be a solution here. And I think we owe it to the process and the future of all the neighbors getting along to try to have that happen.
Yeah, I think this has been a thoroughly considered decision, and I think the applicant eliminated two decks and half of it's second story. And I think I understand, I admire the way that the appellant presented the pattern of the neighborhood as kind of an important feature for us to consider, but I also recognize that everyone else has their decks with a view. Your neighbor has a deck that goes up to the, I mean, you have a deck that goes up to the property line. They would move their deck 8 feet away from the property line in accordance with the setback. I think it's hard to argue that they don't have a right to do that. I just don't see it.
Jack, it rests on you.
As it so often does.
So often does.
So what are the chances, you're digging down for the garage. What are the chances of digging down on the other side and putting the deck above the garage on that side? Like,
Isn't that
It-
not the view side? Maybe they put it there because it's the view side.
I think the property
The view side's the other side.
is perpendicular to the
Okay.
view,
'Cause
kind of.
The neighbors have the deck on the other
Yeah, I haven't been to the site, unlike the members of the DRB board.
Yeah,
side.
but, and
Wait, we can't have responses from the, sorry, I would let you if I could. Go ahead.
so, you know, could they do that? And then the second thing, if they did that, what would go in the space that is currently the driveway? Because if it's just a yard, like how is that different than the deck, other than it's a little bit lower because it's, you know what I mean? Or are you thinking the garage will be in the same place and the deck will be not on top of the garage, and then what goes on top of the garage?
I mean, they got rid of the second story in order to please the neighbors. They could put the second story back and take the deck away. I mean, it's not a good outcome either.
So what, I think what I'm saying is that we're not going to decide exactly what goes where. If it goes back to the DRB, then they could look at the different locations and work with the neighbors to try to come up with something that everyone's happy with.
Okay.
So are we have a vote?
Can I be a coward and just abstain and then it's 2-1?
You can do whatever you like.
Whatever you want. You can do
Does it
that.
pass if it's 2-1? Does the
Yeah,
appeal get
sure.
denied if it's, does it get remanded to DRB if I don't vote?
That would be a cowardly position, but yes, you could do that.
I can vote to remand it to the DRB, but.
Okay.
I'm reading our section. So it would appear you need affirmative majority vote of the quorum.
Okay, I can vote to remand it to the DRB.
Okay, then, Isaac, would you like to make the motion? Or I
Sure.
can, okay, great.
I'll
add.
I move that we remand this back to the DRB. Actually, you know what, Mayor Thier, why don't you do it? Because I think you have the the pieces that Ben was asking for, right? That are part of our code. I think you can articulate it a little more clearly than I can.
Okay, no problem. Okay,
Thank you.
I move that we remand this to DRB, that the staff facilitate that the owners or representatives meet to try to work out a compromise, and that it is remanded to DRB to look at the location of the deck and whether it can be moved. Okay, so why don't we have a vote?
I will second that.
Oh, thank you. Why don't we have a vote?
Councilmember Fredericks is absent. Councilmember Nick Farr.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilner.
No.
Mayor Thier.
Yes. Okay. So the appeal, the case goes back to DRB. And it is remanded to DRB. The appeal was granted. No, just remanded to DRB. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah,
so now-
the appeal was not granted or denied, right? We just sent it back
Exactly.
to DRB.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, we are now to the end of the agenda. We have town council reports. If anyone has a report. You know what, I can report, just something brief, because, our council member Fredericks is not here. I'm gonna ask you to take the conversations outside if you don't mind. Okay. Councilmember Fredericks is not here. She is planning an Earth Day event. I believe the date is April 24th. Is that right?
I don't have a calendar in front of me. It's the Sunday that,
It's okay.
yeah.
We will get the calendar, but look at the look for this on the website. Does anyone else have any town council or town manager reports?
No town manager report, Madam Mayor.
Okay, then the meeting is adjourned.
April 27th.